All right, we got some guitar string canister Damascus right here. And since we're working on this knife right here, the guitar string bunka that we're doing, I don't know if you knew that's what we were doing, but that's what we're doing. Anyway, I'm gonna take this opportunity to do a video on San Mai, because that's essentially what we're gonna be doing with this. With this all being one chunk of good steel, this is what we're using as our core. We're going to use this Hitachi Shirogami that I got from New Jersey Steel Baron, because they're awesome over there. So when I'm doing San Mai, when I make my cladding, I usually try to make it the same width as the core, or really close. It really just depends on how much of the core I want showing, like how far up the blade. And usually you want it pretty low, because the cladding is the pretty part. This is just going to be black, but the cladding, whether you do Damascus cladding or guitar string canister cladding, whatever you're going to do, this is usually the pretty part that you want the most of. You can do this thicker and that thinner, or if you're doing the core Damascus, then you're probably going to want more of the core. So you want this a little thicker than the cladding. If that doesn't make sense, it's basically because when you smash it down into your thickness and then you do your bevels, the thicker the core, the higher up your bevels are going to be. And the thicker the cladding, the lower your core is going to be. So you just have to decide what you want and then kind of go from there. So with this being a guitar string knife, we want most of the cladding showing. So this is a little bit thicker than the Shirogami. And if we need to, we can thin this down. And I mean, I can use something else if I wanted to, but I want to use a Shirogami because I'm not really going to want to forge this down into a thinner bar and then have to clean it up. So might as well just use it right here. The first thing we got to do with this is we got to head on over to the grinder and clean up just one side of this. We don't need to clean up both sides unless you're OCD, then you're probably going to want to clean up both sides, but we just want to clean up one side. Also, if you didn't watch the last video, I do have some sort of issues up on this end of the bar, but it's only up to here. And I really have no idea if this is just the can that came loose. It looks like there are a few cracks in here. And when I was doing the can, this whole end it didn't feel like it became one mass as quickly as it did down here. So there was something going on this end. I really hope I didn't leave the hole too big or something like that. I'm not sure, but we'll find out after we get grinding on this. So there's not going to be anything too special going on right here. Basically, we're just going to get rid of the can that's on here. I didn't do any whiteout in my canister, so I've got to grind the can off, and it won't be too much. I only use 1/8 inch steel, so it'll come off pretty quick. First, I'm going to see what's going on up here. And I want to apologize quickly because this microphone I'm using, for some reason, it cuts out when I'm grinding. So I apologize for that. I'll get that fixed eventually. So I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll go back to the bench and I'll show you the next step. But one thing I do want to mention really quick is we don't want to clean the sides up because we're going to be welding on it. And if I expose the nickel, the welds are a little less than perfect. So I'm not going to do too much on the sides. Alrighty. So I ground what I thought was the canister off, and then I put it on the surface grinder just to get a nice flat surface. And as you can tell, so we're pretty close. You can see right here we've got some canister left. Right here we've got some canister left. Right here, and then a whole bunch at the end, which I'm not too worried about because I need to cut this off anyway. But if you look at the edges, there's some pretty thick pieces of can left, and the can's not that thick, so I'm assuming some of this just kind of folded a little weird. So I'm going to take a little bit more off of this whole thing, clean it up, etch it again, and make sure to get all this can out. There's going to be a little can left on the edges, but this is just too much. Back over to the grinder. So typically I would use my contact wheel, but because I've already ground this flat, I'm just going to run it across here a few more times and hope that I keep it flat. Okay, I think I've got this cleaned up enough. So as you can see, it's still got the canister on the edges here. I feel like it's a little thicker than it should be, but it's okay. I mean, we've got a ton of thickness to work with. So we're gonna flatten this down, it's gonna widen out, and then when we cut out our shapes, we're just gonna stay away from the edges. So as you can see, it'll be one more 1/4 inch piece of thickness, so almost 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little larger than 3/4 of an inch. So I don't think we've got anything to worry about. So with this all done, with this all cleaned up and ready to go, I'm going to do one more quick pass just to clean up this etch. I really don't think that affects the welding process, but I just want it clean. That's kind of the way I am. And then also I just need to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to head over and chop this up. I'm going to cut it to this big flaw right here. And then I'm going to cut it at about here. Then I'm going to cut those two in half to have 2 equal lengths. And then whatever that length is, I'm going to match it with the shirigami. Okay, here we go. So we're ready to get these MIG welded together. So I've got a piece of cladding right here. I've got my core, and then I've got my other piece of cladding. So we didn't clean up the backside because it's just not necessary. It's just wasted time. Some people will clean it up, but you're just gonna get forged scale on it again. So whatever. And then the more I forge this, the less, well, the same amount of grinding needs to be done to get the canister off, but the canister will be thinner, so essentially it'll be easier. So we've got our 3 pieces, and when I do this, I weld the whole entire thing shut, and there's a reason for that. When I first started doing San Mai, every time I would just try to do this like a Damascus billet, it would fail somewhere. It would weld in some spots, fail in others. And it's basically because the thinner your steel is, the quicker it's going to cool down and drop below forge welding temperature. These pieces I may not have to worry about because this is thick. I mean, this together is, you know, we're 7/8 of an inch thick. So almost an inch. So we probably could just do some tack welds here and there and then call it good. But with all the time and effort I've put into my Damascus, my guitar string Damascus, I don't want this to fail. I don't want to have to start all over again. So I'm going to weld this whole entire thing shut around the edges. And that's going to ensure no oxygen gets in here. So even if I don't get this welded on the first run, then there's no oxygen to build up forge scale. So I could take 5 heats trying to forge weld this thing together, and there's no oxygen that's going to get inside. I mean, as long as your welds are solid. That's also one reason why I didn't really do too much on the edges of these, because I want there to be steel without nickel or copper or those metals that just don't really weld too well. I know nickel's not a huge issue because we weld steel with nickel in it all the time, so I'm sure I'd be fine, but I just like to leave a little bit of canister on the edge so I can weld. Anyway, if that doesn't make sense, you know, hit me up in the comments and I'll see what I can do to make it make a little more sense. So I'm gonna head over to the welder and I'm gonna get these welded together, and from that point we're ready to get the forge heated up and get these forge welded together, drawn out, fullered out, and then we'll be ready to cut our shapes. Okay, there it is. Is it ugly? 100%. Is it gonna not let any oxygen in there when I'm trying to forge weld it? Yep, 100%. Anyway, you can see it's still warm, so I'm gonna pop it down, turn on the forge, and get this baby heated up to temp. All right, let's get this little guy in here and heat it up. All right, so it looks like we're up to about 2100 degrees. So I'm gonna use my 12-ton to set the welds because I love how fast this thing moves and I can get through the billet really quick. So, I mean, obviously I can use the Clark iron, but it just moves so much slower. It's not as important with these thicker billets, but if you are doing, you know, a 1/2 inch thick billet with 1/8 inch pieces of steel, then you might want to do it with something quicker. But the fact that we have this thing sealed all the way around, slower really isn't that big of a deal. I mean, if I wanted to, I could hand set this stuff, but here we go. All right, let's get this back in, heat it up again. Of course, I want to clean this up just a little bit, keep the forge scale to a minimum. So while this thing is heating up, I want to say a few words about drawing this out when you're trying to keep the core in the middle. So some people think that you can just hit it from the same side every time and it's going to keep that core centered because, you know, equal and opposite reaction, all that physics stuff. But truly, if you only do one side, for some reason, the top die, the moving piece, seems to press a little bit more than the bottom. I don't know why. I have no idea. But anyway, just make sure to reduce one way, flip it, reduce the other way, flip it. That way you're gonna make sure that you keep that core right in the middle. So the way I'm gonna do it is I set this up so that these kiss blocks are the thickness of what I started with. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reduce it. Sorry, this is the thickness I started with. So if I half that, I'm going to take down about 3/16 of an inch. And then after I get to that thickness, I'll remove these and then I'll flip it and take it down another 1/16 of an inch. And then I'll remove these and put in the right size kiss blocks to take it down another 1/16. And then one more time down a 1/16, and then from there it kind of doesn't matter too much. But not necessary, it's just my little OCD way of making sure that I keep that core centered. We're back up to heat, so let's draw this out a little bit more. Pop these out, flip it. Take it down that next 1/16 of an inch. And then I'm going to clean this billet up again. And from here, I'm going to work on this side next time. So I'm going to put it back in the forge this way. And then I'm going to take it down another 1/16 of an inch. And then what I'm going to do is I want to draw out or fuller out some width toward the center of this billet. I want to leave the front because the front I want to keep drawing out length, because when I cut out my shape, the point is going to be up here, so we don't need the billet to be as wide as toward the middle. I don't know if that makes sense, but it will in a minute. Okay, so I don't have any fullering dies on for my Clark iron yet, my 25 ton. So I'm going to hop back over here to the 12 ton where I do have some fullering dies, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to widen out the middle section of that billet, and I promise this will make sense. Let's come back over here, pull this down a little bit more. Another heat. And then we're going to pull this down a little bit more with it rotated. So we're doing the same thing on each side. Except I'm at the point where I need my drawing dies put in. Heat this up one more time and see if we can get enough pressure to get that down to the kiss blocks. So that's the thing about these forging presses, is that the thinner the material is, the more tonnage you need to get it to compress. So for the really thick stuff, the 12 ton's great. But when it gets to be about a 1/2 inch or so, it doesn't work so well. And then the 25 ton, once you get to be, you know, quarter inch or so, it doesn't work so well. Then you got to bust out the drawing dies. Taking just little bites so that I can get this drawn out, so that I can get this reduced down to the thickness of the kiss blocks. But now we're running out of heat, so let's heat it up one more time to get the rest of this down to those kiss blocks. Now we're going to get this thing drawn out, and my final dimension is going to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. So it's going to be this kiss block. So I'm going to do this kiss block. I'm going to rotate the billet, and I'm going to put this one in, and this should be pretty close to my final size. My intent is that I want to get this close enough to the final thickness that I can get all the forge scale off without taking off too much of the cladding, because as soon as I take off too much cladding, the design will be replaced by just a black core. So I want to keep that design as far down on the blade as I can. You know, ideally a 1/2 inch of core exposed from the edge to the spine is what I'm after. It may be a little more than that, but I'm okay with that. So as I draw this out, I'm going to go straight in on the front. But as I get to the center, I'm going to turn this so that I can get some more width out of the center of this billet. It won't be a lot, but it helps. And then I'm going to go back to straight when I get back toward the end of this billet. So let me put this. We're going to get some of these high points off of here. And then I'm going to straighten this out and go for another heat. Reduce the kiss block size and flip it over. And then we have to flatten everything out. Okay. Let's see if we can get this whole thing to where we need it on one more heat. Okay, I got the flat dies back on because now I just need to get rid of all the peaks and valleys from the drawing dies. So if you leave those peaks and valleys when you're doing a San Mai with like stainless and high carbon core, then you're going to get more action because you're going to grind off those peaks, and then things are going to move a little more. You still get action when you forge the peaks down, but not like you will if you just grind the peaks off. So with this heated back up and my flat dies in, we're just going to clean this up a little bit. Get everything nice and uniform. Still gonna have a few peaks, few valleys, but I'm fine with that. Okie dokie, here we go. This is a completed San Mai Billet. So out of this, we got a length of 24 inches, but really it's not all usable. I'm probably going to start about an inch from one end and stop at an inch from the other end. Also, I still need to figure out how far in I can go with my template, but as you can see, we got plenty of space to get right into the middle. So most likely what I'll be doing is dragging this down here like this-ish. This actually isn't the template I'm going to be using. I'm going to be doing a bunka, like I was saying, but I do have plenty of material for 2 knives. So whether I do this and a bunka, or maybe I'll do a bunka set like I've done with some of my other stainless steel, I'm not entirely sure yet. I still gotta figure out how far out I can go, because I know, I just have to look around on this billet and make sure that I fit this somewhere where there's no leftover canister or weld or whatever. But also, it looks like down here we might have a little more space. But anyway, even if I have to do another width or a different knife, that's fine. I probably should have got a little more width out of this, but whatever, it's still gonna work. But it's nice and solid, and there are still a few more ridges, but also the thickness we ended up with is 0.16, so it's actually a little thicker than it should be. Maybe we didn't get an even. Nah, we're pretty even. Nah, we're fine. So really, depending on the knife, I'll do 1/8 of an inch thick. Typically when I do a bunka, I want to get it down to 3/32, so 0.9 inches. And what I'll do is I will cut out my knife shape, get that nice and centered, cut out my knife shape, and then clean up the edges, and then do a test etch to kind of see where things are, where there might be some canister, some mild steel left, and just adjust for that. This should turn out really nice. So down here, you might be able to see that. You can actually see a line across here. And that probably, you can actually see 2 lines if you look nice and close here. Those lines are probably where the mild steel is. So same down here. I see a line right here, but again, that could just be surface stuff. I'm not entirely sure until I dig into this guy. So here's a glimpse from the next video that'll show kind of what we ended up with. And there's a quick etch to show why I absolutely love this Damascus pattern. So sorry about the lights, but yeah, you can see it's extremely unique. I don't know any other way to get this pattern beside the guitar string. And that's the final look, or close to it. It'll get a little cleaner than that. But also you can just take a peek at the thumbnail and it'll show you what we ended up with. So with that, if you have any questions about my San Mai process that I maybe didn't mention in this video, go ahead and put it down in the comments. I'll get back with you. I'll help if I can. If not, maybe I know somebody who can help you. The knife community is pretty awesome when it comes to that. We got a few stragglers out there that think that they need to keep secrets, but we figure it out eventually, right? So just share your info with people. It's not such a big secret that nobody's gonna find out. Anyway, let's just help each other out. We're not, I don't, that I know of, I don't think we're in competition, because somebody who wants to buy my knife probably doesn't want to buy yours, and somebody who wants to buy yours probably doesn't want to buy mine. To me, it's an art form, and when you buy an artist's knife, you're buying that artist. You're buying their soul, basically. So kind of what it boils down to is, what functional art are you looking for? Anyway, enough preaching. As always, thanks a ton for stopping by and supporting the channel. If you haven't seen it yet and you feel like ordering one, there's shirts. There's links to shirts down below. So again, I appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video.